I think Forager is a so-so game. I enjoyed it, but I will not recommend it. It has too many flaws that I will categorize as quality of life flaws, meaning those are flaws that are not bugs, nor glitches, but mechanics or visuals that are outright lacking. I'm not going to talk about any mod right now, I'm talking about the classic version. That is the one with the nuclear update. I don't really see myself playing the hardcore, creative, nor the one island version. I think I got enough Forager with the 54 hours I played it, 40 hours into the first playthrough, those being split in 14 hours of actual gameplay and 26 hours of letting the game running so materials would harvest themselves. The second playthrough took me just 14 hours. I did not see how a third one would enhance my vision on the game, so I didn't bother. Some games actually leave me wanting to go back to them to try and do things that I never did in my past runs of the games. Some examples of these games are Risk of Rain 2, FTL, Slay the Spire, League of Legends, Diablo 3, Hades, Skyrim, Remnant from the Ashes, Warframe, and other ones. Most of them are not making me return for the story nor the characters. Except for Hades, the gods are so flipping good, dude. But for finding and executing a way to break the game, meaning a way to become overpowered no matter the effort it takes. So it is about accomplishing a mission that I previously and arbitrarily set up. Forager should not be the exception to this tendency I have, but it sadly is. I don't see myself coming back to it. Going nuclear is not something I need to do, neither I want to do, because harvesting materials and producing components in a faster way without having anything to build or make is not my jam. I clearly ran out of objectives when I built quarries, mining poles, and bought drones. I discovered the void in the late game, but everything would have been probably easier and faster if I did it sooner. I wrote that line when I was in my first playthrough, and now seeing how little time it took me to beat my second, I can confirm it. The amount of rare materials you get there is bonkers, compared to what you can get producing by in the market and harvesting. All those three together combined don't give you as much of the rare materials as going into the void for up to 50 levels, which isn't really a hard thing if you made some advancements with your sword, bow, potions, or have drones. Before going to the void, Forager was to me just the waiting game, waiting to get gold from banks, material from furnaces, sewing machines, and industries, and also waiting to get items from mining poles. You could speed everything up if you want with builder scrolls. Those boost efficiency, but you can also not be in your computer pressing one button for the building scroll to activate if you just go to sleep or to a family meeting while leaving the game on. That is not a really difficult decision to make. So let's talk about the flaws Forager faces in its gameplay. Things that I saw through my playthrough that I really noticed. Some are very obvious, some are not. And some of them are just suggestions for things the game would benefit from if it had those. Let us dive into the abilities. I will talk in a broad way about some abilities. In Forager, you get a skill tree that spreads into 4 categories. Foraging, which lets you focus on farming, energy sustain, and surviving. Technology, where you can focus on producing things faster, make special materials, and create drones, mining poles. Also, it lets you make trains and nuclear reactors, but honestly I saw no use for them. Economy, the one that lets you focus on gold production by account making or selling stuff. Also, it has vaults so you can get better inventory management. And lastly, magic, the one that lets you focus on making potions, scrolls, and most importantly, the void and sigil maker. Let's talk about windmills. On the Virgin skill tree you get to choose the windmill, which produces the seed you set up, but nothing else. You can also make sprinklers in order to have your plants automatically watered. The problem with this building is that you have to plant all the seeds manually. You may not have to water them because of the sprinklers, but you do have to use a shovel in order to make holes. Then click on the holes to plant the seeds one by one. There wasn't a click and drag thing. In order to click one time and plant on each hole you pass through, there isn't automated seed replanting, nothing that automatically made holes. Also, drones do nothing around the building, not a task that isn't hitting and picking plants that have already grown. So, why do I find this to be a problem? Well, in the same skill tree there is an ability, the last one you get in the left corner, which is the one that lets you build quarries. Those are buildings that spawn a pretty big load of minerals of different classes pretty often. A pretty good building because I did not have to worry anymore about the minerals I needed and got more freedom to explore and learn about all the other things on Forager besides farming minerals. So why isn't this a mechanic that the windmill has? Why not make a building that spawns an area of different planted seeds, even if it isn't as often as a mining quarry? I don't really know why do I have to commit to be there in order to produce the prime materials I need. It really seems to me like I'm getting punished for not staying around the windmills while I'm exploring the islands, because my furnaces, sewing machines, anvils, factories and offshore drills will run out of cotton just because cotton plants don't spawn as often, even with the ability that makes them spawn more often. Sure, I could get cotton from ships or markets, but there won't be as much as I need to keep the operation going so smoothly. And that, I think, is a flaw of a game with incremental-like or industry-like progression. I did not really see the point on producing food. It seemed just like a novelty, because cooked fish was almost the only food I consumed since I started playing it. It was so reliable that I could even sell all of it, and 4 minutes later have another big stack for me to use. Maybe you could make ingredients in order to make dishes to sell them and have more money, but I wasn't going to stick around the windmill to get the veggies I needed. Also, in order to fill the collection in a museum, you could use this ability, but I'd rather wait for it to spawn in the markets and just buy them to fill the museum instead of wasting one ability point. I really like the abilities as a mining quarry, but I think the building should be a lot more expensive because it is permanent and it doesn't pose any kind of inconvenience while giving you every mineral you will ever need. A solution for this one should be to attract enemies more often that focus these buildings, or letting it take a portion of its life each time you finish all the minerals from a spawn, so a maximum number of spawns is available per quarry. I think the same should be applied to the windmill if it gets broken. Maybe let the plants in the windmill take more hits per plant in order to be collected. Also, the ability that lets you find coal in every stone you mine seems pretty useful, but I don't know if it's broken. That should be a clear solution for the lack of trees for wood to coal, but you know, the windmill should be automatically producing. This is the path that I took my first playthrough, and I can really say it is way easier if you take foraging for a first run. Masonry tables and carpentry tables seem to be for novelty reasons, just in order to make some place more cozy. Maybe customize the main space where you will be, like at your windmill. It seems that doors and walls can block the enemy's path, but I haven't realized if they actually spawn indoors in that case. The factory actually seems like a big leap into the production of materials. Also, it is a place where you create drones, nuclear stuff, and the obliterator. There is not much to say about this, just that this is supposed to be the big boys' playground when talking about production for the high-tier equipment in the game. The most painful thing I saw about drones is that they do not have a lot of functions. They can shoot enemies, they can shoot resources, they can pick up resources around you, the same as your pet. And that's about it for their functions. That was really disappointing to me because the description in the factory where you make them says, "You are too smart to do your own things, let them do the things for you." And let me tell you, bruh, that's so far from the truth. You have the option to leave drones in some buildings you made, like furnaces, sewing machines, factory, mining balls, windmill, and others. You cannot leave them in banks, slot machines, markets, lighthouses, and others. I do not know why it's that way, but it is. At first, I thought it was about enhancing production of the buildings where you sit the drone, but I didn't notice a change. Seems kinda arbitrary to me. If there were no changes in the buildings, I thought you could sit them in buildings to collect and rule a certain area, meaning they could start killing enemies, animals, mining, collect resources. Well, it seems that they just sit there. No actions, no uses, no shooting, no collecting. Then why would you do it? I'm guessing to light up a sun. To be able to look at the model the drone has, maybe? Or is it to deal with the awful system of them following you if you have too many? I noticed I didn't talk about the single most annoying thing. They follow you everywhere, but they are the same. Meaning, if you have 10 drones with you, you will always see them without any changes on opacity, nor a change on the way they behave. If they want, the drones will be all over you. No matter the place, no matter the action you are doing, your character will be sunk in a sea of drones. There is a way around it though. Just walk from left to right and take advantage of those 2 seconds they take to follow you, in order to see where your character is going to be. Or you could make only 3 drones and hope the models for them are not the biggest ones. There is really not much to say about trains in this game, and I didn't ever feel like I was slow, even walking all through the map with at least some upgrades in my boots. Meaning, not the best boots, but just 2 or 3 upgrades. I really found this to be useless. Markets are the best building the economy tree will give you. The amount of rare stuff you can get there while being kinda cheap is bonkers. You get the ability that lets the market have more items to sell, it just gets better. Vaults are the ones that let you not worry too much about your inventory space. They are kind of cheap to make if you have killed the laser beam monsters in the desert islands. There is an ability that lets you have more space in the vaults, and also it claims that you can unlock items in spaces in the vault, but I haven't really seen that. Sometimes I saw things in my inventory that were already in the vaults after getting that ability. I do not know the reason. Maybe it is my fault. Also, I didn't get a button or something like that to lock the item in place in order to never see the item again after putting it into the vault. You can send them to the vault from your inventory with another ability. What I didn't really like about it is that there is no button to self-assortment if you come back from the void. You have to send them individually, which is just tedious. Last thing about vaults, in order to fill the things in the museum, you have to carry them in your inventory before you get into it. Probably because the exterior and the museum count as different instances. It is just annoying to do that, especially if it is something like a relic, something you sent to a vault a long ago and you don't know which vault has it. I never really used anvils to make gold after the other game, where I didn't know how to make money. Later, I realized I could just use the gold for better materials instead of making coins. There's an ability for you to gain more coins if you produce them in anvils, but I still find it not to be worth it. Then there are banks. By themselves, they can get you enough money to buy an island if you wait enough time, or they could just give you enough money to buy a drone in the early phases. Still, banks seem pretty useless if you do not have the ability to make them produce faster when you set them next to each other. I guess you could be producing coins in the endgame just to reach the achievement of getting X number of coins, but I don't find it attractive to just wait for an achievement to complete itself. There is a thing I don't really understand. In the economy tree, there is an ability that lets you sell crafted items for more money. If you try to make giant skulls with 6 bones, it will sell at 24, while each bone sells at 4, so it is the same if you craft them or not. Probably it is that the code doesn't recognize the crafted one as crafted, but just a mob drop. I do not know, it doesn't bother me, it just exists. Lastly, in economy, the top right ability is the most necessary for your mining poles, which doubles the range where you can mine. Really, the initial area where they can mine is just awful. If you didn't have a quarry, your mining poles will be kind of useless. On these shrines, you get to choose between one of 2 blessings. They all seem to be good, but there is actually some really broken, like the one that gives you double money for your items. You can really stock on just cooked fish, slime, bones, and other things that you don't use as much, and sell them once you activate the shrine. My only problem with the shrine is that it takes 40 minutes to refresh between activations. The buff stick to you for just 5 minutes. There is an item or an ability that reduces the time it takes the shrine to refresh by 10 minutes or something like that, but still seems like a lot. This is the building where you have to spend the most in order to make its items, because most of the items you can make here are upgrades and endgame items. Upgrades for all the roads you got from the dungeons, and also craft cosmic ingots. The upgrades are good for the electric, fire and skull road, not for the ice road. The skull road is just hilarious, to be honest. Probably this is the one that I find to be the best in the magic skill tree, even it is the one of the last ones you will get to pick, I think. This is the one where you can make sigils in order to spawn bosses, and also to make a portal to the void. To be honest, the easiest boss and the only I spawned in order to gain 4 spirit orbs every time I killed it is the robot. It doesn't hit you very hard, it is easy to avoid, and also it isn't really expensive to make, at least compared to the other bosses. The Void is a place where you can test your equipment facing a ton of enemies in an endless set of rounds. You can also mine materials in there that aren't available in the plains. After you pass through round 5, you start finding uranium and toxic waste, which is what you need in order to make the sigils for the robot. But you don't really have to wait until having the sigil maker in order to go to the void, because there is a merchant that appears every now and then, dealing 3 items at a time. Often, those items are pretty rare, and the merchant spawns really often, at least in the early game. You could buy a void gate from him, or sigils, or drones, even nuclear waste. He's really useful. So, how can you break the game fast? Buy islands in the bottom part of the map, the scorched part. Find the altar where you can trade hearts for bonuses. Make or buy boss robot sigils. You will need uranium and star fragments. Defeat him. Use the sigils only in hearts. Reinvest. Get a lot of drones. Farm more robot. Get more hearts. Get more drones. Repeat. Don't stop until you have like 50 drones, and you can actually start enjoying the game while not even seeing where the character is. Also, in my second playthrough, I saw that a possible outcome of the altar is giving you 3 levels per heart, so you can get to level 64 if you are lucky enough, I think. Fighting in Forager is something of a task. It is not really something you could enjoy. The combat is fairly simple. Melee combat with your pickaxe is point and click. With your sword is point and click, but it has some area of effect. With your bow is about holding the left mouse button, charging the arrow until you can fire it. To be honest, the bow feels quite painful to use. You can also roll with your right mouse button, but it doesn't feel as responsive as it will in a Souls-like game. You can also use bombs, scrolls and potions in order to make some damage, but they are a little expensive for the early game. Fighting doesn't matter a lot in the main map, because there is not a lot of monsters roaming around, and also they are not really dangerous or hard to beat. You get some variety and quantity of monsters when entering the dungeons or spawning bosses, but that's about it. In Forager, when you get enough money to buy an island, you are also buying an opportunity to get a special event. Meaning, you could discover a building where you get to clear a dungeon, or you can solve a puzzle in that island that gets you an item with a unique ability. Now I will talk about the dungeons in the game, which are 4. They bring with them enemy variety, puzzles to be solved, and a rod with a unique ability. The desert dungeon is the first that I stepped into in my 2 first playthroughs. The first one was just a coincidence, and the second one was intentional because of the road you get from there. This dungeon has fairly simple puzzles based on columns that you have to turn on with mobile batteries. The boss in this dungeon is the first difficulty spike I found in the game. It doesn't do a lot of damage, and it has not more than 1 attack, but it spawns a lot of monsters if you don't kill him right away. I chased it going inside, setting bombs and running outside the boss room. I don't know if the quantity of monsters he can spawn is capped, but I actually faced a lot of them. After beating him, you get rewarded with the electric rod, which is the best rod in the game, letting you mine a lot faster and kill monsters easily. The Skelly dungeon is a maze without light, and it really doesn't matter it having no light. There is no need for it. I was seeing everything clearly all the time. There are no real challenges here, just buffed skeletons, some hidden doors, and that's all. In this dungeon you get the skull rod, the worst in the game. It spawns a skeleton that doesn't help you. It is just a simple mob that your drones won't like, because they will kill it right away. The fire dungeon is straightforward. You enter and get the keys you need to get. Avoid some fireballs, turn some torches and columns, then you defeat the boss, which spawns monsters if you don't kill it quickly. It is not hard. You are rewarded in this dungeon with the fire rod, which can shoot fireballs. It's just okay. The ice dungeon has some more interesting puzzles, playing around with mirrors and lasers to burn ice crystals. But the puzzles are kind of dumb, because you can only move the position of every mirror you find in 4 different directions, so the solution is pretty inevitable. After moving some, you get to fight the boss. It shoots ice projectiles. They stun you. That is kind of tedious, but you can avoid them. After killing it, you get the ice rod. This one lets you fire ice crystals to freeze stuff. That's about it. In the plains of Forager, if you got an island that doesn't have a dungeon building in it, you probably got one with a puzzle that, when solved, will reward you with an item. Most of the puzzles are common sense. Follow a pattern, read a clue in the same island, identify shapes. But there are some puzzles I didn't really like, because of what they meant for the structure of the game. I'm talking about the Ice Galaxy puzzle and the musical bells. The Ice Galaxy requires you to know binary language, not all of it, just the basics. I do not like that because it is not about common sense. That is something you learn through reading theory outside the game. In a sense, I found it a bit pretentious to add that, because of the way all the other puzzles were structured, which is mostly about following clues, following patterns, and identifying shapes. Musical bells one is the same for me. It requires you to know about musical theory. Not much, but it does, meaning the bells have a higher pitch and a lower pitch. In order to know how the notes read in a partition, you must know the fundamentals. Lastly, the Fire Galaxy puzzle. Seems like a really good exercise, kind of a Rubik's Cube. Not as hard though. So, I cannot recommend Forager in this state. I ended up playing it more than I thought I would, and I kind of regret it. But at least I can get my opinions out, to be heard by at least 2 or 3 people. I enjoyed making the video and writing the script. I sure hope to make more soon. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and give a like if you want. I see you around.